Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So in this video I want to talk to you about if Palantir is a $500 company and when that would be. So I have to tell you honestly, I've been feeling kind of useless because as a creator I really enjoyed creating content about Palantir when the stock price was falling, and people were losing faith and people didn't understand what this company was about. AI was an abstract term and we had to the Palantir community had to create videos explaining what Palantir is. We did interviews with the likes of CodeStrap to, do a ducks and bunny language of, how it works. And, we were doing all these financial models. And that's when I really felt useful as a creator. And then ChatGPT came along and Palantir blew up. And somehow it became this, the top, 10 most mentioned stocks on even CNBC, and it kind of became a mainstream company, and suddenly everybody agreed that it was a fantastic company. The only question was if it was overvalued or not overvalued. So I really felt kind of useless at my job. But now Palantir in the last 4 days fell 30%. So it used to be $17 or very close to $17 just a couple of days ago. And this makes me feel useful again because now it's time to go back to the old bandwagon and help, be like a cheerleader for the stock and, reminding people about that it's the, while they're asking daddy to hold them and they're sucking on their thumbs in prenatal positions, to remind them that we are in this stock for the next 5 to 10, and I hope to be in the stock for like the next 20 years. And if the stock is going to where I think it's not going to matter if you bought it at 17 or 14 or 12 or whatever. So in this video I want to talk to you about if Palantir is going to hit $500. I want to tell you about a book that I've just read that is about 100 baggers. Actually I haven't fully read it. I'm on the last half an hour. And I want to show you a fantastic interview that actually demonstrates what I'm trying to say. So, as always, if you like this video, please make sure you hit the like and please make sure you're subscribed. And if you want to speak to me, just hit me up on Twitter. Vince is bullish. My Twitter is somehow doing better than my YouTube. I don't get why. Maybe because Twitter is awesome. But anyway, say hi to me over there. So, where was I? Palantir, I think, is going to be a very, very big company in the future. As I said, I just read this book by Chris Mayers, I think he's the author, 100 Baggers, completely corrupted my mind. I really recommend, if you're a long-term investor, to read this book. And what's fantastic is that I myself, as a child, sort of, saw 100 baggers in existence. For example, when I was 16, I spent 1 year in the US and I saw how people were going nuts about the iPod. I came home and I told my dad to buy Apple at, a few dollars at that time in 2006 and just hold that stock. And he looked at the chart and he said, it went up 20% the last few days. I'm not going to buy it. It feels expensive. And every time we look at the price of Apple, my dad would have, 100, probably 50, 60 times his money since I told him to buy. And I saw this with my own two eyes, okay? Then the second company that I actually missed was Tesla, right? I even understood in my head that Elon Musk is going to be the richest man on the planet. I just somehow didn't connect that for Elon Musk to be the richest man on the planet, it will be through his stocks, and for that to happen, the stocks have to go up, and I somehow missed that investment, the biggest mistake of my investing career. And now we're at Palantir. So Palantir is a company that has a huge growth potential. I believe for the next 20, 30 years. It has an insanely sticky business model. It's very hard to get rid of Palantir. They don't have competitions, and many of the things that are the moats of Palantir, people bring it up as bearish points. So for example, the fact that Palantir needs all these forward deploy engineers, it does two things. It makes them think, or it makes you think that they're not scalable, so nobody's really trying to copy this business model, number one. And number two, because their solution is really they're delivering a solution. They're not delivering a thin pre-made program that you need to install and everybody uses the same way. They actually come to your company, ask you, what are you trying to solve? What is the results that you are trying to get? And they really tailor make the program for you during a 6 month to a year process, which is very costly for Palantir, but then it's very, very hard to get rid of this problem for that company, because the company or the organization that is using them, they become addicted, they start building on Palantir, and it's just very, very sticky. And guess what? In year 2, year 3, year 4, that customer is pure profit for Palantir. So this is still, to this day, is very misunderstood about Palantir. So why do I think Palantir is going to be a 100-bagger stock? It's because of what I read in the book, that there is not really, if you read this book, there's not really a correlation between which companies become 100-baggers. Funny enough, if you would ask people what industry produces 100-baggers, then I think almost all of you, I also thought this in the beginning, that it has to be tech. But the truth is that there's 100-baggers everywhere. And for example, one of the companies that was mentioned in the book was Monster Beverages. And that company actually came in an industry that is super competitive. There's zero customer loyalty. It's a very stagnant industry. It takes a very long time to develop drink products. So it's not somewhere where you would even look at a 100-bagger. But the one thing that is very common in 100-baggers is that they have a huge or very high gross margin, and very high gross margin tends to be very sticky, right? Palantir has this. Then another thing that you need for 100-baggers is time. And time means the average 100-bagger, I think in the book, was like 23, 24 years that you needed to hold the stock to become a 100-bagger. And that also means that the company has to grow, because in the end, for a stock to become 100-baggers, it means that maybe, the multiple of the stock has to go up. So let's say that you had a 10 PE and the PE goes to 30, and then your earnings has to go up maybe 30 times. And then you get, the P multiplication and the earnings growth, and these are like the twin engines of becoming a 100-bagger, right? So it's very important that you need a company that has a huge runway. It's not a developed company. Like, you can very safely say that Apple is not going to be a 100-bagger because it's just so freaking big, right? Palantir, when it was at $6, it was a 12 billion, barely 12 billion company. If you took away the cash that they had, almost 10 billion company. And for them to become a 100-bagger, they just need to make it to a trillion. And there's a few examples of a trillion companies, right? For Apple to be a 100-bagger, they need to go to 300 trillion, and they're already the biggest company. So very, very unlikely. We can safely say it's not going to happen. So here's my issue with the statement when people say Palantir will become a 100-bagger. So issue number one is, I feel that there is a group of people who think they're long-term investors, but they're not really long-term investors. And when they hear this, they're like, great, next year it's going to be 100x, and then I just sell at the top and it's going to be amazing. And that is not how it's going to play out. So the every stock to hit 100-bagger status, so let's say that Palantir reaches 100-bagger from, below $6 and it becomes a $570 stock, right? So that is going to happen maybe in 20 years. If we're very lucky, 15 years. If we're unlucky, 30 years. But does it make it a bad investment? No, it's fantastic returns if you can just hold it, right? So this is my first problem with saying that Palantir is going to be a 100-bagger. And then the second thing is that people then start calculating, oh my God, it's going to go to 500, I'm going to be a billionaire, and blah, blah, you do all these calculations in your head. But the thing is, you're probably going to be wrong about your future predictions of a stock. And let's say that Palantir is not going to be a 100-bagger. Let's say that it will just be a 50-bagger. Will that make you sad? It wouldn't make me sad, okay? So I just want you to know that I think that Palantir, to me, is a potential 100-bagger, but it's not next year. it's not the year after, it's many, many, many years in the future. And I tend to hold every single Palantir share that I'm not made to sell because, yeah, whatever. Don't even get me started. And I want to show you an interview that was just published on YouTube about a guy who uses Palantir every day. And he actually really illustrates similarities between Palantir and AWS and how AWS was growing, and he emphasizes that it takes time. This guy really, really gets it and has some very cool points. So I want to show you this interview, a small segment of it, and then I want to tell you something.
And it's the same thing if you think about it. Maybe this is a good example. If you were to be doing video editing, making music, what operating system would you use? Would you use a Mac or would you use a Windows?
Most people would use a Mac.
So if you're focusing on data,
right,
I think that you're probably going to make the correlation of people don't know it yet, but you'll probably want to use something like a Foundry or a Gotham. And so it's just a different way. It's not to say it's the right way, right? If you were to use video games or like, hey, I'm going to play Diablo, you wouldn't open up a Foundry instance to play Diablo or play Call of Duty, or you'd probably get on a Microsoft, operating system or a Windows computer and just play, right? So I think that it's not to say it's the right answer for everybody, but I think it's what people don't realize they need yet. And it's something that I think we've patched over time, which is using a Microsoft operating system, which is meant to be used for everybody, right? Anybody can open it up. They can use calculator, or they can play video games, or they can go on the internet, and so that's not the use of a Palantir Foundry instance, at least not yet. Maybe they come out with the consumer things where you play internet or play video games on a Palantir sort of software. I don't see it as of yet, but this is something that is specifically focused on making enterprises the most efficient that they can be, focused around data and decision making. And
why is that comparable to an AWS over the long term? Why do you think? Because AWS is cloud computing, you need to host your data.
For sure, it's apples and oranges, for sure. It's a comparison, but the growth aspect is not, right? So I think the thing where, maybe people are like, AWS and Foundry are completely different. It's like, I understand that. The products themselves are completely different. They do have both cloud aspects to them, but that's not the comparison I'm trying to make. The comparison I'm trying to make is the growth trajectory for the organizations themselves. I think a lot of people don't understand what AWS was back then, and it got to $1 billion, $2 billion worth of revenue within 5-6 years, and then it took off to the point where I think it's making $80 billion a year in revenue. And I'm trying to compare that to what.
That's an 80x. So it was making 1 billion in revenue, and now it's 80 billion in revenue. By the way, I cover out Amit's face. I'll be Amit. I will try to imitate him.
Palantir really is. People are just coming into Palantir is really only a 5-6 year. Sorry, Foundry and Gotham are really only a 5-6 year journey of actually trying to physically sell to the commercial customer. They've been honing in on their strategy over the past 20 years. They've been around since 2003, but they were focused on making themselves invaluable to the government and things of the like. And once they really finally, turned over the leaf and said, you know what, I think we have the product that we need to go to commercial, then they started it. And I think it's been slow, but, to get to that point. But now that I think you've gotten there over the past 6 years, going from, I forget what they went public at, but I think it was less than like $1 billion in revenue to go from $1 billion to
about 800 million, something like that.
Yeah, something. So that was just when they went public in 2020. So, yeah, I mean.
So us Palantir shareholders are somehow blindsided. I don't know. So this company is 20 years old, right? But the Foundry product, as you heard, is only 6 years old. And in 2020, they went public with the yearly revenue at barely $800. And now this year, which is 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023, we are projected to do maybe $2.4 billion, which is already like a 3x increase in just a few short years. It's insane growth. But yeah, we I don't know, we're like so focused from quarter to quarter.
It's starting to go pretty quick if you think about it in that perspective. Like I was just doing some analysis of how quickly their revenue was growing, and I think in like 2018, 2019, they were still in $200 million revenue quarters.
Yeah.
And so the fact that now we're talking about getting to $600 million revenue quarters and growing, and releasing new products that, I think that's the other piece is AIP is probably the first of many products that will continue to release. If you think and you look at those presentations that they've had, they had the one for Gotham that they started at kind of 2016 or 2017, and they have all the additional capabilities that they've added to Gotham since then. They had Foundry, which was kind of like 2018 or 2019, and all the capabilities they've had since then. They had Apollo, which started in 2020 or 2021. All the capabilities they've added since then. They are just releasing AIP, which is just at the moment what it is today, and who knows what capabilities they're going to be adding. The thing that's beautiful is that a lot of times all these different applications talk well with each other. And that's something that I think people don't acknowledge. It's like Foundry, it's like you have all these applications. All these applications are based off of an operating system of data that you have that are all kind of intercommunicated. And then same thing with Apollo. Apollo's helping deploy specific versions of software or rights to people within an organization.
So basically, this really highlights how fast they're growing, how it seems like that Palantir was an idea. They developed something that took them, 15 years. And then to make it commercial, it took them, a little bit of time. And then 6 years later, they're scaling that product like crazy. And on top of it, they're coming up with newer and newer products. And this is also something, it's impossible to model what products in the future they can come up with, right? Because they're actually very good. They seem to be prophetic about some things that they predicted that people will want in AI. And so it's sometimes you can have black swan events, but sometimes you can also have like positive catalysts that happen to companies, which is impossible to model. So my point is that if you believe that Palantir is going to be a $500 stock 20 years from now, 25 years from now, and you want to be invested in this future, it doesn't matter if you bought it for 17, 14, or 12. So I feel useful again because the Palantir stock price is falling, and I just wanted to give you guys this viewpoint. If this was the dip that you were waiting for, I hope that you're buying. Please make sure you do your own analysis, and if the stock is below your target price, you know what to do. Pull that trigger. Thank you so much for watching. Vince is bullish on Twitter, and I'll see you in the next video. Make sure you're subscribed. Ciao, ciao.